One day, something fell from the sky.
Our X-ray subject this week, the gods must be crazy. One of the most unexpected success stories in the movie business these days is a little comedy named The Gods Must Be Crazy that has a way of opening slow and then running and running for a long, long time in lots of different cities. For example, 3 years in Paris, 29 weeks in Boston, 36 weeks in Los Angeles, and 26 weeks in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a smaller town where no film in history has ever run for 26 weeks. The movie was made in Botswana by a South African director named Jamie East, who has been making movies for 35 years but has never had a hit like this one. It starts with a very simple event, which we saw. A pilot drops a Coke bottle out of his plane, and it lands in the Kalahari Desert and is discovered by a tribe of bushmen who think that it was dropped from the heavens by the gods.
But the gods had been careless. They had sent only one. And now, for the first time in their lives, here was a thing which could not be shared because there was only one of it. Suddenly, everybody needed it most of the time. A thing they had never needed before became a necessity. And unfamiliar emotions began to stir. A feeling of wanting to own, of not wanting to share.
And so eventually the tribe just gets totally fed up because everybody's been fighting over this bottle and who gets to use it next and who gets to sleep with it tonight and so forth. And so finally, the bushman who found the bottle decides to take it and walk off into the desert and throw it off the end of the world so it can go back to the gods who dropped it in the first place. Well, he doesn't find the end of the world, although he might think that he does. He does, though, find the end of the Kalahari Desert, and he walks straight into the 20th century and into a whole lot of other characters, including a school teacher and the clumsy man who's in love with her.
Good morning, Mr. Stain.
I brought you...
Well, that's all well and good. It's kind of a South African Jerry Lewis there, and there's also a plot in the movie involving mercenaries and jeeps and border wars and all kinds of other elements that this bushman manages to walk through, and one thing kind of leads to another, and it's sort of an endless chain of slapstick events. But the question is, why is The Gods Must Be Crazy so amazingly popular? Why is this movie made more than $10 million, and it's only now going into wide release around the United States after these launching pads of the long runs in many of the major cities? This movie has no stars. It doesn't have much of an ad budget. Most people have no particular interest in seeing a film from South Africa, and yet it just keeps on running and running and running, and the word of mouth is good. My guess is people like this film because it's so simple and low-key and down-to-earth in its comedy, and because it depends on human nature for a lot of its last scenes. A lot of the Hollywood comedies we see these days seem to believe that big budgets and technology are going to get last. And so we have car crashes and we have amazing special effects.
Right.
And the technology gets in the way of the simple little gags that this movie, I think, has in common with movies from 40 and 50 and 60 years ago.
And Universal, I mean, it doesn't surprise me it's doing well in Paris. This film is imitation Jacques Tati a little bit with the clumsiness of the character. I don't think it's as good as Jacques Tati. My problem with the film is the slapstick comedy. I think if they had stayed with the Bushman story, which I think is priceless, I would have liked the film much better. But I can see the appeal of the comedy. I just think the Bushman story blows away the other stuff.
There you're right. Now, there you got another problem, which is most movies allegedly have to be an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours long.
Right.
This movie is about an hour film, and if you could make about an hour film about the Bushmen and what they do.
Well, if you're more inventive, you can make an hour and 45 minute film.
Well,
I'd like to see this guy. I'd like to see this guy redo it. I have a feeling it may have been made with white and black characters, frankly, for commercial reasons. The Bushman story is a wonderful picture.
Okay.
So much for Coke bottles and